Hello and welcome to another episode of Leader Generation brought to you by ModOp. I'm Patty Parobek, stepping in today for your host, Tessa Berg, and joined today by Gareth, Cunningham, and Maurice White, our Director of Search Experience and our Senior Search Strategist here at ModOp. Maurice and Gareth, thanks for being here today.
Great to be here. Thanks.
Thank you.
I'm really excited about today's topic. We're diving into the elements of generative AI optimization. So GEO, AIO, ASO, whatever you want to call it. And we're getting real expert take from our amazing experts here at ModOp on what matters and what doesn't as far as getting you visibility in generative engines. To help guide our conversation, we're doing a very fun comparison against the periodic table of SEO elements. If you're not familiar with that, it's exactly what it sounds like. It's a periodic table of SEO ranking factors that's changed and evolved over time, started in 2011 by a collection of SEO experts, including Danny Sullivan, refined every year. And what we realized here at ModOp was, number one, we love that tool as a teaching tool for SEO. Something that grounded and centered us, set expectations for our clients. But also, when we talk about generative engine optimization, that is what a lot of our clients have been talking about, and helping them compare against those elements has been really helpful. So today, we're giving you our take on the periodic table of GEO elements by going through the key factors of SEO and comparing it. Does this matter for GEO? Is it less important? Is it more important? And what do we need to consider in this new era of visibility? So let's dive in. So to start, there's of course a lot of listeners who might not be very familiar with the periodic table of SEO elements. So Gareth, Maurice, can you guys give us a little color on what it is and what it means to you in the overall search experience?
Sure, I can go first. Thanks for having me, Patty. It's always great to get a bit of time and kind of talking about this as a little bit of nostalgia too, because I remember whenever it first came out. Maybe it's showing my age of that there. I think that the periodic table was a masterpiece to help an industry understand the direction in which it was moving and what was required. I remember whenever it first started to float around, it was kind of understand what the elements it was required to. You had something smart to say to a client. That's basically what it was used. It was a little bit more of an understanding, because SEO is not an easy discipline to understand if you're from a different world. So it really helped kind of our clients understand what was required, kind of the level of input that was needed. And from that there, we've now went from what almost seems like an analog version of things across to a digital version, which I know Maurice has been doing a lot of work on, kind of the periodic table for GEO. But it evolved out of a place where it was really a very welcome tool, and shed a lot of light, a lot of very valuable light, in not only just the practitioner's world, but also to the client as well, to really let them see exactly what was involved in it. So yeah, it's evolving as it always had. It's never stood still. Every update, every core update, every whisper or rumor caused it to update. So yeah.
I love that you call it an SEO's North Star. Maurice, is that the way that you felt about it too, growing up through SEO?
Yeah, absolutely. Back with the, older versions of the periodic table, it also included factors for negative SEO, or things that you don't want to have happen, or you don't want to have on your site. So for me, I thought that was really important to know what not to do. You know what I mean? What not to do too much of, and being able to understand, an idea of the ranking factors to then be able to apply that to any optimization strategies.
I love that. Yeah, I remember the very, very, very old days of SEO putting white text on a white background to try to stuff keywords in, and that made an appearance in the periodic table for negative SEO for keyword stuffing. I love that. So in the most updated version of the periodic table of SEO elements, we have maybe 5 or 10 different elements across 5 or 6 different categories. And those categories are credibility, content, user experience, code, architecture, links, and performance. Now, we'll go through this because I don't know. Do all of these matter to generative engine optimization? Do only some of them matter? But I think it might be fun to start with maybe the most accessible category, and that's content. So in this bucket, we have things like using natural language, the quality of the content, relevance of the content, freshness and uniqueness of the content, obviously the actual keywords that you use, value and accuracy. I'm dying to know from you guys, when you have been studying the space of generative engine optimization in SEO, is it just as important? Are there things in this table that are more important now for generative engine optimization? What's your take?
I can give a very quick one on that there and pass it to you, Maurice. I think that there's an even more of an importance on content now. I think that all of the stuff that you just laid out there, Patty, is important. But one of the key things that we see is that if it's not structured in the correct format that either search engines or LLMs can understand and kind of, it's almost like Velcro. If it's just smooth on both sides, there's no traction. A lot of content that we're seeing that's been produced historically is, content for content's sake. The design is the design, the UX is the UX, and then we have the content, and trying to get the content into a place where it can be connected correctly with search engines, all the historical stuff like header tags, keyword weighting, primary, secondary keywords, things like that there is fine. But now we're in a different era now, or a new era, with this novel thing called LLMs. And what do they want? There's a few things that we have really kind of nailed our colors to the mast on, and what we know what they're looking for. And the content is going to become an even bigger part. We've been talking about this, Maurice and myself, for years, that content it's no longer going to just be a nice to have it. It must hold all of the where, what, how, whens, and whys to be able to put yourself forward in the search engine's eyes as you currently do today, but also in LLMs, that you have something to say, that you're a part of the conversation. And as they look at the site, as they can connect with the site with all the different elements that they give us through some of the things you just mentioned that we can get into further, that content needs to be structured in the correct way to be able to portray that everything is laid out and it's accessible and it's accurate,
Yeah, absolutely. I think those are really great points that you made there, Gareth. Content really is the foundation for associating relevance with your search terms. So whether that's in the traditional search sense or when you're searching in the LLMs, having that quality of content is there. So when we talk about overlapping factors between the SEO periodic table and the GEO periodic table, we want to, visualize two tables coming together to where you have factors that are foundational for search, but then you have these additional factors for content, like Gareth talked about, the structure of the on-page content, the quality of the content, including relevant data points, citations for that particular content. Another increasingly important factor is the author's credibility, right? Because then we started, getting into credibility, but the author credibility, having a profile for that author, have that author with other articles that are relevant in this particular topic. Like there are just other things to, build on once you have those foundational SEO elements in place, right?
The author part that Maurice is referring to there is something that, in just as a snippet of info, in 2005, Google filed a patent for a thing called author rank, which was designed to replace page rank If anybody who's back in the olden days would know that. And a number of times I've seen it online there recently is, are you utilizing this patent in your core updates? And they've refused to answer it. But as Maurice just mentioned there, the credibility of the author and the connection points that they have to, in many ways, real world settings and digital settings is starting to become a lot more of a finger on the balancing scale, for want of a better term. So authors are, you need to be pristine. What you're saying needs to be factual, accurate. You need to be, and that will be verified through your connections, through your author trust and kind of connections that you have. A very, very important point to bring up.
Yep,
Oh, I
absolutely.
love all that. That is so key. And I hadn't thought about that, the importance of an author having already established credibility for that topic, for that content, for maybe that semantic network of keywords and tokens. So let's move in then to credibility. So in the periodic table of SEO elements, credibility for SEO was characterized by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 elements here in the 2024 version of the table. Authoritativeness, brand, being a creator, your expertise, experience, and trustworthiness. And I'm interested in your take. How is it different establishing credibility in SEO versus establishing credibility in the new generative visibility? Are there different methods that you should be using?
Yeah, I can touch on this a bit, Gareth, and then you can bring us home. I mean, expertise and credibility in the generative space is really important. How you go about establishing that is quite different than traditional SEO, because in traditional SEO, like we were just talking about, having an author profile, having backlinks from trusted sources, being referenced on those high authoritative sites, linking back to your site, that's how you were able to establish credibility for the most part, right? Moving into the generative space, your credibility is more about your brand awareness in the ether, in the internet space. What other sites are mentioning your product or services or your brand, but not necessarily linking back to your site. So increasing your brand mentions is definitely important. You know what I mean? And also being an expert in the services and the products that you're talking about. So it's definitely different areas. You also want to be factual with your brand mentions and your name out there. You also want to take a look at other mediums of marketing, right? It's not just SEO. Now you're leaning into PR, you're leaning into your social media, you're getting out there on the Reddits of the world. You have your YouTube video in tip-top shape where you're communicating helpful content and useful information that can be easily consumed. So it's not so much more about linking back to your website. It's more about associating your brand as the authority in this space throughout the internet and different marketing points. Gareth, what is your take on that?
Not a lot to add on that there. I think if you look through the lens of Apple or Microsoft, you have a pretty good blueprint to look at for excellence. Kind of their every touch point that they have that makes them who they are. There is a spirit of excellence and kind of crossing the T's and dotting the I's. And they encompass all of the things that Maurice just walked through there. We're not all Microsoft or Apple, but I think they set a pretty high bar for kind of what excellence looks like, and that's something that ModUp aims for every day.
Yeah, you can think of it more as like a digital word of mouth, right? Because if
Mm.
someone comes and make a referral to you, like Patty tells me, "Hey Maurice, this guy has the best barbecue sauce," for example, and then I'm going to go out because I know Patty likes barbecue, right? So it's a digital word of mouth that you're gaining that credibility and building
Yeah.
that authority in your particular space.
I love that. That's so helpful. And it sounds like as you guys are talking through credibility and what it means now versus what it meant in traditional SEO, it makes me think that cross-channel, cross-funnel, comprehensive marketing strategy
Yes.
is definitely going to be more important now because it starts to bleed into things like public relations or overarching brand strategy, like making sure that you have authoritative uniformity across all the pockets, right? That, or at least that's what it sounds like to me. Is that apt?
I would say that's a pretty balanced way of looking at it. It's no longer no longer can it be a nice to have or an add-on. The search engines and the search engines obviously are pushing into LLMs, but the standalone ones is there. They are making the demand and the bar is high, and it will require these cross pollination between these different disciplines to be able to give those LLMs what they're looking for. So as Maurice mentioned there, PR was a part of SEO traditionally for years and years, and then obviously Webmaster Guidelines updated, so it kind of became less of a more effective strategy to use. But now there's a lot of things that we're seeing that were maybe not so as effective in the latter part of SEO that are now LLMs are saying that these are very effective and they're kind of in their, if you want to call it, their core algorithms that they're putting together, which we can maybe get into some of what we think that looks like from the GEO periodic table.
Love it. So we talked about content, we talked about credibility. We even touched on links. There's a huge section of architecture and code inside of traditional SEO periodic table of elements. How does that play into the generative engine optimization game?
Probably the most important factor outside of content. I mean, content is associating the user intent, with your brand, product, or service. But having that technical foundation from traditional SEO and then build upon that with your generative optimization techniques, right? Like information architecture is very important. But then as you start to take a look at the generative side of it, making sure your schema markup is there so that the bots can easily identify and understand what's going on your website, making sure that the heading hierarchy is correct so that the way the bots can understand the importance and understanding of the heading hierarchy. So there's different things that are going on that impact the technical portion.
A key thing to take away there, what Maurice just said, is that you the GEO will work on top of good SEO. The foundational elements of it needs to be there in order for it. It kind of acts like as a springboard for that there to really become its own. So and that's why we put at Moda, we push for just kind of three pillars that we always come to any kind of engagement with, that we want to leave our clients with, which is a search engine friendly website. The code, we're touching on that now, the information architecture, the code base needs to be clean. It needs to be well designed and put together so that everything you've got to say then in the second pillar, which is the content, which holds relevant search intent, is well optimized, it's balanced, it's positioned on the website in the correct place, first and foremost. That there has a chance then of starting to be able to penetrate into the SERPs. And then the third part then is the authority, having that underlying authority through traditional backlinks and authority that comes through other mediums, to kind of say to the search engine that you're the most trusted source for this specific query or phrase. We want to make sure that there's them foundational elements are in place before we would ideally lead the clients into, obviously the clients are they're asking for information, but we can't, it's almost like you can't put a turbocharge on a car that has no wheels. It won't go any faster, it won't go anywhere. So the fundamentals is one of the things that we look at in any engagement, because it's just good house cleaning and it's best practice. And that's exactly where we're seeing results. We're seeing really good results whenever a site, the foundational elements, has got the tick mark beside it.
Yep.
everything else that starts to really perform well.
I mean, that's very well said, Gareth. I mean, it's like having one hand tied behind your back, trying to do the same amount of work, right? Without having the technical foundational aspects implemented on your website, anything you do with content optimization really isn't going to gain the maximum amount of visibility that it could, because on the technical side, it's too confusing for the search bots to understand and associate intent, understand and associate relevancy, the performance of your website, making sure that you have a website that loads quickly, that the user experience is organized in the way that elements are quickly delivered to the user and they're able to navigate through your website fast, right? So those are things that will need to be in place in order for any type of GEO or even on-page SEO optimization to have a greater impact, right? It might move the needle a little bit, but in search, we're in the business of generating revenue. So getting the clicks and the views and the search traffic is great, but the quality of the traffic is what's important, and not having the foundational elements set up. You're having one hand tied behind your back trying to win the race, right?
I love that analogy. I think that's perfect. And I completely agree. It's a hard thing to get right, and that's why you need the expertise that you do to help you structure how should the layout of this information architecture flow in order to get the most value through the user experience, the most value through the site. So in architecture and code, it's things like schema and making sure that you have a secure website. It's mobile first and mobile friendly, page structure, taxonomy, the URLs themselves, the crawlability of the site overall. But then Maurice and Gareth, you guys also touched on things like performance, like speed and stickiness, responsiveness. And ultimately, they all took up to the user experience. If a user coming in is going to have a great experience and be satisfied, and have their expectations met for how quick and easy and frictionless the experience is, the more credit you'll get in SEO. And then it sounds like absolutely the more credit you'll get in generative
You
engine
know,
optimization.
Patty, I mean, if I could add one more element here to the SEO periodic table, it would be the redirect strategy as part of the code and architecture, because that's one step that, if it isn't done right through a site migration, can greatly impact your search visibility and hinder the user experience. So I think that's important to have there as well.
It's so interesting that you bring that up, Maurice, because I was thinking how many times right now in the state of generative engine optimization are 404s thrown up because generative engines don't always get the URL correct. So that's one of the ways that you can, one, keep an eye on what is generative engine calling me out for my brand or my entity, and understanding like what pages were they trying to get to. But another thing to look at is where you're erroring out in your website in general. Should those be redirected to where they intend to go? But yeah, I totally agree. A redirect strategy can make or break a migration or a user experience for sure. All right, guys, we're almost out of time. This has been so helpful and valuable for me, and I know for the audience as well. We talked a lot today across a lot of different factors of SEO leading into GEO. Is there a final takeaway from both of you that our audience of marketers listening now should take away?
You want to go first, Maurice?
Yeah, I would say take your time. Don't try to rush and do everything. If your site is in bad shape, there's a lot that you might need to do, and it can add up fairly quickly. Focus on the things that might have the greatest impact, like getting your site structurally sound, making sure that your on-page content aligns and is helpful with your product and services, right? It's no longer about trying to optimize for particular keywords. It's more about providing helpful content that's easy to understand and allows the user to move on in the next phase of your conversion process or your conversion funnel. So take your time. Don't feel overwhelmed. What about you, Gareth?
No, I think that building on what Maurice has said there, I think that it's opened up a lot of opportunity for to do things in a new way, in a smarter way. And I think that with a good partner, to be able to navigate through these different shifts and the changes, to kind of lay in front of your brand or your business a way that's tried and tested that will actually work, without kind of pushing, and oftentimes budgets are set so they are that they're, you know, they're set so they are, but it's to come alongside and say, okay, we understand this, we know what to do. There's a few things in here that need to be done, but lay it out in a way that's understandable, just like the periodic table. To kind of, everybody's in this here to learn. It's all about education, um, to understand what needs to happen, when it needs to happen, and what the expected outcome from this kind of shift from a traditional search engine standpoint through to almost a truly semantic web where there's finer details and nuances that AI can only think of because they're obviously smarter than us, because everybody's paying for AI as they are now. But just to really lean into that kind of brain power that it's given us, and making available to us, I think that's kind of the takeaway that I would have. It's a lot to do, but it's getting a lot easier.
Yeah, I mean, and just to say there too, Gareth, like, search is a marathon. It's not a sprint, right? But when you add in other factors like paid media, PR, branding, while you build up your SEO, GEO baseline to where you can be able to take advantage of optimizations, it should be looked at like that. Like phase in the different elements that you're trying to do versus trying to do everything all to win the 100
Yeah.
meter dash all at once. We're trying to run the marathon across the globe. That takes endurance. That takes time, right? So just knowing that it's not a sprint, it's more of a marathon.
It's
Again,
also it's also an inevitable as well. I think that's the key thing as well, that over and above just the actual doing the work, and maybe the kind of the key part for educating ourselves and our clients is that this is a train that's not going to stop. It's going to be inevitable that things will need to change in your perception potentially of what your go-to-market strategies will be in the future. It's just to, as Maurice says, go slow. Don't be overwhelmed with it. We're all in this together.
Mm-hmm. And that search train, once set up properly, continues to pay dividends well far into the future. So it's just, again, remembering this, it's that long-term result we're looking for. And in the meantime, other marketing mediums can get you that short-term goals, get you to those short-term goals. But yeah, that's a great.
I agree with everything you guys are saying. I really like the thought of being intentional. You both definitely hinted around making sure that we're prioritizing because there is a lot to do. And if you need, and you likely will, a dedicated partner to help you prioritize what is going to make the most impact with what you're working with in this marathon, where can they reach out to you guys?
Sure. Gareth.cunningham@modup.com. Feel free to email me, call the office. Happy to talk to anybody about this. Here's an area of great interest to us. Maurice?
Yeah, don't email. No, I'm just joking. Well, you can email
Talk
me,
to Patty.
Maurice.white@modup.com. But yeah, we're always happy to talk SEO. We can talk for hours about it, and we can also make it happen. So that's what it's all about.
Awesome. And both are also available on LinkedIn. You can look up their profiles, reach out to ModUp. Thank you both for your time. If you want to listen to more episodes of Leader Generation, you can find us at ModUp. That's www.modop.com, or of course, your favorite podcast platform of choice. We're there as well. Thanks again for your time, Maurice and Gareth. Until next time.
You're welcome. Anytime, Patty.
Thanks for having us.